When it comes to improving our general health and fitness profiles, most of us realize that we have to make some changes to the habits that we engage in on a regular basis. However, this usually appears to be a daunting task. Eliminating bad habits is difficult, and replacing them, as is often the suggested strategy, doesn't appear to be much easier, if at all. A lot of the clients that we consult with on a regular basis have already tried to make dramatic shifts in their lifestyle more often than not. They've already gone above and beyond to attempt change in some form or fashion, and usually, almost inevitably, they have fallen short of their initial aims. But why? These are not individuals who are lacking in an industrious nature. These are not individuals who aren't disciplined in their own respective pursuits, in their professional careers, or in arenas within which they're passionate about. So why do they consistently struggle to sustain these desirable lifestyle changes that are going to benefit them both in the short and long term? Well, usually, not always, but usually, it's because they committed to these changes in a heightened emotional state. When their motivation was high, that's when they came up with an often bold action plan. And attempting to maintain that commitment to said bold action plan resulted in some degree of burnout. And when that burnout reared its ugly head, they lost any momentum they had built and, in a sense, fell off the wagon and dropped the ball with the maintenance of that habit or habits that they were attempting to make a regular part of their daily routine or a regular part of their lifestyle moving forward. And this is where the concept of habit stacking becomes incredibly useful. So the question becomes, what is habit stacking? So habit stacking is a concept that I came across many years ago. I can't recall the specific source from which I learned about this concept, whether it was a documentary that I was watching or an interview or a YouTube video or a podcast I was listening to, a book I was reading. I can't recall exactly. However, over the past few years, the concept of habit stacking has become increasingly more popular, and for good reason. Now, simply put, habit stacking is basically piggybacking a new or further challenging habit on top of a more deep-rooted foundational habit that's already a regular part of your routine. Usually, those deeper-rooted habits are second nature and almost run on autopilot as is, which obviously is going to increase the likelihood of you being able to effectively sustain this new or further challenging habit and consequently be able to develop much greater momentum with it, and then of course experience a much more progressive and or desirable yield as an outcome of having implemented this new or further challenging habit into your life. And now habit stacking usually is incorporated in one of two ways. The first being an unrelated habit, and the second being a related habit. So an unrelated habit, generally speaking, doesn't have to have almost anything in common with the foundational or anchor habit that you plan to piggyback upon. This stacking strategy, in order to prove effective, really only requires an alignment of frequency and time of day in order to prove effective. What this might look like, as an example, would be a client who maybe is prioritizing some healthier habits. In this case, they want to improve their hydration throughout the day, and they've really been dropping the ball when it comes to consuming adequate amounts of water. So they might look to their routine to see where they could regularly incorporate the consumption of water by piggybacking upon another habit that's already deep-rooted. So they might look to their morning routine as an example. So they start off their day on a progressive note, and they might look to what anchor habits are already present, that are already second nature, that they basically run on autopilot during that time of day, that they can then expand off of, piggyback onto. So maybe they look at their morning and they say, wow, every single morning I shower, and I have for years. Hasn't changed. Likely won't for a long time, if ever. So they might decide that from now on, they're going to piggyback upon that deep-rooted habit of showering every morning, and they're going to consume 1 glass of water immediately before they step into the shower. That would be an example of an unrelated habit stacking strategy. A strategy that stacks a related habit is similar, but not exactly the same. Usually, what this approach looks like is taking a habit that would be much closer to a deep-rooted foundational habit, one that you've already proven or that a client has already proven is sustainable over an extended period of time, and then making that particular habit further challenging. An example of stacking a related habit or expanding a related habit might be if a client got into a regular routine over the past 5 or 6 months of exercising daily. And maybe this was a client who had never exercised before in their life. So this was an incredible jump for them. This was a very difficult task. And what they had done was they had stacked upon an unrelated habit a regular routine of doing 10 push-ups and 10 squats every morning at 8 a.m. right before they began cooking their breakfast for the day. But now they wanted to expand this progressive habit because it had proven to be able to improve the quality of their life and their health and their fitness, and they felt confident with their ability to sustain it, and now they wanted to make it a little bit more difficult and hopefully experience a more progressive yield by prioritizing as much. And so what they might do is take that same habit but expand the difficulty. Maybe now they're going to do 15 push-ups and 15 squats every single day at the same time they previously were, so they're drawing that same habit out to a greater difficulty level. Or maybe now they're going to maintain that 10 push-ups, 10 squats, but they're going to add 10 sit-ups. That could also be a similar approach. When it comes to successfully implementing a habit stacking strategy, one of the most important contributing factors is specificity. And it's often overlooked, and rarely purposefully either. What often occurs is people are too vague with what they intend to do, and as a byproduct, it makes it very difficult to sustain this habit that they're attempting to stack. What inadequate specificity might look like is, I will do push-ups at breakfast. It seems okay. You know that you have to do push-ups when it's breakfast time. If breakfast is a deep-rooted habit for you, where the frequency and the timing is in alignment with when you want to do push-ups, it would be a reasonable starting point. However, there are still too many unknowns. Are you planning to do your push-ups after breakfast, during breakfast, before breakfast? If you're planning to do them before breakfast, are you planning to do them before you eat, but after you've already prepared the food, or in advance to when you prepare the food that you're about to eat? And once you've clarified that, how many push-ups are you planning to do? These are important questions, and the more clear you can be, the greater the degree of specificity you can provide, the increased likelihood of you being able to sustain said habit. So an example of adequate specificity that would prove to be much more likely for you to sustain long term would be, I will do 15 push-ups at 8 a.m. immediately before cooking my breakfast. Much more specific and a much greater chance of you being able to sustain that habit being stacked upon the more deep-rooted habit of having breakfast daily. And when it comes to habit stacking, start small. Start slowly. Focus on long-term sustainability, which is certainly not as popular and often overlooked and undervalued, but it will serve you so well, understanding that you won't have to face the frustrating struggle that so many individuals do as they overcommit to lifestyle changes and then have to deal with the inevitable ebb and flow of starting, stopping, restarting, stopping, over and over and over again as they're unable to maintain the forward momentum with the new habits that they've attempted to implement into their life. Now, if you plan to implement habit stacking into your own life, make sure you smash that like button, and further, drop a comment and let me know exactly what habit or habits you plan on stacking. And I sincerely hope that this allows you to level up your life.